Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doctors Making a Difference. I'm your host, Dr. Peter Crane. I'm a physician in rural Idaho where I've been in practice since 2011. Over the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to be both a physician and a patient, and I've been so thankful for the doctors and other healthcare professionals who have helped me. I invite you to join us as we highlight physicians around the world who are making a difference in their communities and with their patients. Our goal is to give physicians and other healthcare professionals the tools they need to be successful in medicine, in finances, and in life. What we do makes a tremendous difference for our patients and our communities. Please go to your podcast service or YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review and hit the like or subscribe button. It helps get the message out to others. You can also check out more content on our website, doctorsmakingadifference.com. Finally, if you would like to be on the show or have any questions or topics that you feel should be addressed on the show, please contact me. The easiest way to get in contact is to subscribe to the newsletter and then hit reply to any of the newsletter emails. Welcome to the Doctors Making a Difference podcast. Today we have Dr. Jennifer Wilson with us. So pleased that she's willing to take the time to spend here on the podcast with us and talk a little bit more about what she does. So I'll turn it over to you, Jen. Go ahead and introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, hi. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Jennifer Wilson. I'm a family doctor. I'm from a small town in Indiana called Rushville. Did my undergraduate at the University of Indianapolis and then went to IU for medical school. Did my family medicine training at Ball Hospital in Muncie. After that, I did emergency medicine for about 6 years and then made the transition back to the residency as one of the associate program directors.
That's so cool.
Which is where I continue to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's actually awesome. How long have you been working as a director there?
Right around, I think in October it will be 11 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. You've influenced lots of people in their journey, me included. That's what we were talking before we hit record on the podcast here. I was able to be a graduate of the same residency where Dr. Wilson teaches, and I'm so thankful for her example and influence in my life. And I think it's pretty cool you stuck with doing that. It's not an easy road in some ways because you're always teaching somebody new, but it's also kind of cool that you have been able to practice what you preach and still do kind of a full spectrum sort of practice. So do you still...
Go ahead.
Do you still practice?
Yeah, it's definitely not what I saw myself doing when I went to residency and even when I graduated residency, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity and I feel that it's kind of the best use of my particular skill set at this time.
That's so cool. When I was there, you had finished the residency and you were kind of there as associated with the residency, but you were working a lot in the emergency room. That was your main thing, and a lot of international medicine. And so I'm kind of curious, are you still doing emergency medicine on the side, or do you do that in context of your directorship and the residency?
Yeah, so I still do it on the side some, mainly at Jay County Hospital, which is a small rural hospital that's associated with IU Ball. So I got my start in a small rural ED, and I've kind of gone back to that sort of setting.
Oh, that's cool. So you work now in the residency full-time. You do some moonlighting or on the side work through a small county hospital in their emergency room. And we were talking before we hit record, you still practice obstetrics along with your directorship in the family medicine residency. That's pretty cool too. Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I really enjoy is, going through that pregnancy with the family and being there when that baby's born and kind of watching their family of 2 or family of 3 expand. So it's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to be part of that journey for the family. That is cool. So I want to get back into a little bit how you got into medicine and stuff, but one of the things we need to remember at the end of this is I want to go back to one of the things that inspired me most about working with you years ago was your passion and drive to do international medicine and to travel to places that have very little access to medical care and don't have access to that. And I think you're still doing some of those, if I'm understanding correctly as well.
Correct. COVID sort of put a damper on it. the hospital wasn't really looking for their doctors to do international travel for a while, but we've now been able to get back into it. We took our first group to Kenya in January, and we'll be going again this coming January. And then I've gotten involved with a mission in Belize, and so I've taken a couple of groups down there since we restarted our travel.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Tell me, you grew up in a small town in Indiana, and some of the listeners on this program are doctors in training, and some of them are aspiring people who might want to become a physician. And it's a long road. It's expensive. It's a challenge to become a doctor. It's a challenge to be a doctor. What was it that made you decide to do this? When you think back to those years ago, how did you decide to go from small town Indiana to being a physician?
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, my parents always said that I was going to be an attorney and my brother was going to be a doctor. So now we are a doctor and a chef. So very different than those aspirations from elementary school. But I went to college thinking I was going to do physical therapy. Medicine was always something that intrigued me, but I didn't know anybody that went to medical school other than my own doctors. And it just kind of seemed like it was something that other people did, and not really something that would be possible for perhaps for me to do. And then as I went through college, I realized that, physical therapy wasn't going to be what I wanted to do. And then I looked at occupational therapy and realized I liked that a little bit less. So kind of heading into my junior year, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with that science degree. And then my brother was involved in a very scary accident and spent an extended period of time at Methodist Hospital. And I just remember seeing the residents coming in and caring for him and thinking, wow, they don't seem that much older than me. And just kind of talking to them about what they did and, kind of their stories made me think, maybe I actually could do that. I kind of made the decision that I was going to go become a pre-med student. So I took organic chemistry as a senior alongside a lot of sophomores. I was the older person in the class. And kind of from there, took the MCAT and ended up in medical school.
Well, and then that's a great story. It's interesting as I've talked to people, almost everybody has some personal connection with medicine, because it is a long drive, it's a long road. And as people get into it, almost everybody will say, I'm doing this because somebody helped someone I love or somebody helped me along the way. And it's easy as we get farther on in a career to sometimes people lose sight of that and get overwhelmed with the paperwork and the insurance and the burnout. And I think it's important for all of us to go back to your origin story. Why did I decide to do this? And so your brother obviously turned out okay, became a chef, it sounds like.
Yeah. I do think I agree. I think it's important to remember kind of your why. And on those hard days, kind of look back at that and think, okay, today wasn't what I wanted it to be. And things could have gone better, but, remember why you went into this field. And I think it can help you to remain resilient.
Yeah, I agree. So as you went along that journey, you entered medical school. How did you end up as a family doc? I mean, there's so many different... A lot of people, when I talk to people who are pre-med students, they'll say, I want to be a whatever type of doctor. And it's interesting to realize that a medical degree opens up the world to thousands of different career paths. You could choose to take that whatever direction you want. So I was curious, how did you end up choosing family medicine and kind of full scope family medicine? You do the obstetrics and the emergency room and directorship in a residency.
Yeah, I went into medical school thinking I was going to go into pediatrics, and really enjoyed my pediatric rotation. But after that, I did family medicine, and I worked with a family doctor in Newcastle, Indiana. So a little bit bigger than the town I grew up in, but still a smaller town. And she did everything. She did nursing home rounds. She did inpatient. She did obstetrics. And I really just fell in love with it. I realized that, yes, I enjoyed kids, but I also enjoyed the adults and that they needed good doctors too. And I just really liked that being the family's physician, taking care of multiple generations of a family. And so, that 4 weeks with Jennifer Rollins in Newcastle, Indiana, really kind of changed my career path. Then, I did a rotation then at the residency to make sure that I didn't just fall in love with her practice, and that it was truly the was truly family medicine that I enjoyed. And it was definitely it was for me.
That is so cool. It's interesting, like I say, that for everybody, no matter what specialty, you should talk to people. They all have an origin story and somebody that inspired them. And you're working in a residency where I suppose you get the chance to inspire lots of young aspiring physicians, and they get to hear about how you did what you did, and then they get to kind of extrapolate that into what they do. And so tell me a little bit about, how did you first get acquainted with international medicine? Again, you grew up in Indiana. You're on track to become a medical doctor, and you're taking inspiration from people there. How did you decide, hey, I want to branch out and do something in Kenya or Belize?
Yeah. So I had opportunities in medical school. IU does an alternative spring break where they go and serve, and I never really had any interest in that. But I will never forget one day walking into our residency office, there where our desks are, and on the dry erase board it said Mexico in May, ? See me if interested. And from Dr. Bunch. And I thought, well, I don't really think I have much going on in May. I took Spanish in high school and college, so maybe that's something that I might be able to do that. And I, talked to her and, ended up going on the trip. And I can remember very vividly the fourth day that we were there. Well, the fourth day we were working it was a Thursday. We were seeing patients at the landfill. And I saw three people in a row that had classic angina. They're telling me about this pressure on their chest when they're working and gets better when they rest. And I just kind of hit my breaking point a little bit, and had a good cry and realized I didn't know, I'll never know why I was born where I was and have been given the gifts and talents and everything that I have, but I realized that perhaps I could use those to make some small difference to these patients that were working in a place where they were going through trash, things that had been thrown away, to try to find anything that could be reused or recycled. And kind of from that, I just kind of explored other opportunities to get involved. During residency, I actually made a total of 5 trips to Mexico. Wow. With Dr. Bunch. Cool. And was mentored and kind of on how to get involved in leading trips. And then also as a resident, had the opportunity to go to Haiti and then to go to Rwanda. And just each opportunity was a little different. And I realized that, I just felt like it was a way that I could try to give back and make some small little difference in the lives of others.
So that's pretty neat. And as you talk to different doctors, it's pretty unique. There are people who have been on trips, or many people have traveled outside of the United States and seen other places, but to go there and interact face to face individually with people and with their children, it's unlike anything else. And I was privileged to follow you on a couple of trips during residency, and in medical school I got to go on one of them, and I've subsequently gone on several of those. And I think that it's a amazing way to connect with people internationally and do something that really makes a tremendous difference in their life, and something they could not possibly change for themselves.
Yeah, I think sometimes during residency or even during practice, we do get sometimes the everyday humdrum kind of gets us down, and definitely kind of being able to share that kind of experience with other doctors, reinvigorates me, recharges me, again, reminds me of my why. And I love seeing residents have that experience of kind of oh, wow, okay, there is, I'm not always going to just be practicing Medicaid. I'm actually going to get to practice medicine.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think it's good for us to step back and say, I went in this to become a healer, to become a doctor, not to become a participant in a healthcare system. Like that doesn't really motivate people. But when you're
no.
in the moment saying, I can help you, it's a pretty special moment. Do you have any stories along that through your experiences that you'd be willing to share?
Um, like I guess one of my more unique stories was probably in Kenya. I uh, had another physician and I saw a patient who had been attacked by a lion. He had
Wow.
been out herding his cattle, and it was the dry season, and so a lion tried to come and get one of his cows, and so he had to fight it off. And luckily, he had just a lot of flesh wounds. He didn't have he wasn't hurt more, and but he had a lot of wounds, and so the two of us sutured wounds closed on him for a lot. It took well over an hour with both of us sewing to take care of this guy. And as we were doing it in the clinic, multiple people came in because it was like a really big deal that that this had happened to him and that he was getting this care. And yeah, we I think and it definitely is not an experience that everybody's had, to take care of somebody with a big cat bite. It is interesting though, because a lot of the Maasai, many of them, because of where they live and how they live, have had encounters with various wild animals. And like somebody got gored by a buffalo, or got knocked down running from an elephant, or those sorts of things. Definitely different stories than what I hear in East Central Indiana.
No doubt.
So
Wow.
I've also had the honor of having a couple of babies named after me in Kenya. Seeing the moms during their pregnancy and that sort of thing. And then when I come back, they're like, "Oh, this is little Jennifer," and I'm like, "Well, that's incredibly special."
Wow, what an honor.
And yeah, absolutely. Like it definitely is. Very humbling, very humbling.
Well, one of the things I was privileged to go with you on a trip to Kenya and to Mexico during residency, and then subsequently had, like I said, had a chance to go to places like that several times and have enjoyed it. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I think you taught this to me, but we learned it just in context of working with other people, is sometimes going and doing international medicine has kind of gotten a bad rap because people just show up with a duffel bag full of medicines and never show up again.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that I worked with on you and the ones I've been involved with, in each case, we've worked diligently with people who have boots on the ground on a more regular or continuous basis, or they have a locally established clinic. They're not really able to function independently, but because of the support from those who come in, or fundraising that we do on their behalf, they're able to serve with a minimal resources. They're able to serve thousands and thousands of people. And I think that's probably why those people who named their baby Jennifer were so honored that you would come and travel to their land and give of your time and energy without any particular cost to them. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do agree that the whole drop in, drop out sort of thing is not obviously that's not a sustainable method. And I think building partnerships again with those warriors that are on the ground doing the work day in and day out is definitely the way to go. I think one thing that I'm really proud of is we were able to introduce ultrasound, point of care ultrasound, to Talek in Kenya. We had actually a graduate of our residency program from Santa Claus, Indiana, that went on a trip and had multiple people that, wow, like they just really needed, imaging done. And so she went back to Santa Claus and was on fire, and her church raised the money to get an ultrasound. There's, programs where you can buy refurbished units at cost. And, it's really changed the healthcare delivery in that area. If you remember where we worked in Kenya, was about, 3.5 hours from the nearest, kind of bigger city. And,
Right.
when you tell a patient like you need to go to Narok to get this done, it's it's a big deal, and often it's not going to happen. They
It's
just
impossible. Yeah.
they don't have the way to get there, they don't have the funds to get there, they don't have the time to be gone for that sort of thing. So, it's amazing for them now to be able to get those type of services there. We've been lucky enough to take, an ultrasound tech with us to help do training. We've also brought the clinician over to the US where he's worked with, our pulmonary critical care docs. He's worked with the obstetricians. He's worked with the MFM and all of those sorts of things to get training and, really be able to make a difference in his community.
That stuff makes a huge difference. We did that once on a trip to Ecuador. I've been on to the same locations several times, and we took a ultrasound that was when the hospital had retired because they had replaced it, and it was small enough we could fit it in a suitcase. It was a little bit challenging getting it there, but we took it to them, and we took one of our ultrasound techs with us and trained the folks there how to use it and gave them the ultrasound machine, and it made a lasting impact because not everybody that
Absolutely.
not everybody gets an ultrasound needs to have that data, but a lot of times you can learn, oh, this person needs to have their gallbladder removed, or even for obstetrics, this baby's in the breech position, or there's a lot of things that can be learned with a simple technology that has helped other people. So that is cool.
Absolutely.
And I find it interesting that that you've continued to do that. I've spoken with people who've done medical training, and they'll say, oh, yes, I went on an international trip one time in my pre-med time or during medical school or residency one time. But you've continued the legacy of doing that for years and years, and you've no doubt formed friendships and relationships of trust with people all over the world in those locations. How have you maintained the interest and the funding, frankly, to do that? Because that's really it's quite a sacrifice to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I'm very fortunate in my current role as an associate program director, that, I'm in charge, or I kind of lead up our global health efforts. So, it is sort of part of my job to do those sorts of trips with residents and allow them to have those opportunities. And I think, each time somebody new goes and you kind of see the trip through their eyes and their experience, and kind of when they have that aha moment, it just really drives me to continue to do it. Also, as you said, the relationships, I really look forward to seeing, people when I go. I have a goddaughter in Belize, and I have, various people that I see them each time that I'm there, and, we catch up, and, with social media, it does make the world a lot smaller and you can communicate, but there's nothing like that in-person sort of contact. So I think that, also kind of motivates me to continue to do it. And then, as far as financially, I'm very fortunate that with the work that I do, that I am able to continue to experience those sorts of things. I feel very fortunate that, with what I do here in the United States, luckily we're compensated in a way that allows me to continue to be involved in those sorts of things and to make those investments.
Well, I think that's reflective of why you went into medicine in the first place. You wanted to make this big difference. You observed it, and you've kept that passion. Maybe it's through the eyes of your learners that has kept inspiring you to do it. And there is nothing more rewarding than sharing something with somebody else and seeing the light in their eyes and be like, oh, we can help you solve this problem, or giving some understanding in a situation, both here at home in the United States and abroad. And I've found when I've done that work, as I talk to people in these different countries, it's not me coming with superior knowledge and information and distilling it to them. It's us working together. Like, truly, I often learn more from them than they learn from me, because when we go to sub-Saharan Africa, boy, they know a lot more about on-the-ground HIV treatment than I will ever know. I'm not an infectious disease doctor, and when we go, I always learn something about screening for and treating HIV because it's something that's part of their everyday walk. Or sometimes, like you mentioned, big cat wounds or running away from a giraffe, things you wouldn't have really appreciated or understood in the United States. But it's a two-way street, and I think those are really fun because it's instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm coming and there's some sort of superiority cultural thing," it's so different than that. It's coming and saying, "I want to be a part of this," and it's as much a gift for me to be here as it is for anything else. I want to be here because I honor that, and I think. For me, the reason I've continued to spend time and resources to do those type of trips is simply that it's so motivating and inspiring that you want it, and it feels like this really fulfilling time. Usually, we have to use vacation days and personal finances to do it, but it's worked out in such a way that I look back on those and I think, wow, those are some of the most valuable things I've ever done in my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. I completely agree. Also I think I think we provide so much encouragement to them when we go also. I don't think that people like overlook, that we left our jobs and we left our family and came this long way. And again, we don't do it for that, we don't do it to be recognized, but I find that like people that really encourages them that we would want to do that and want to go and, work alongside them and, be, try to be healers with them.
Well, and that's a good point. There's no Medicaid. There's no health system in a lot of the places. For better or worse, there's not much of a health system. On the other hand, when you're there helping somebody, it takes all those external influences out of the equation. It's to just say, I'm here for you. What can I do to help you today? And these are the resources we have, limited as they may be, and I can connect you with the resources we have so that you can get this taken care of. I'll share one story with you. Is one time we went to Uganda. We've been back to the same location several times and worked with an organization that is there, started by some people in Uganda. We've gone and supported them on a number of occasions. And one time, a 13-year-old young woman came and saw me as part of this. We were screening lots of people to find those with serious illnesses. And her chief complaint was that my chest moves. And sure enough, when you'd stand there and watch, her whole torso, her whole sternum would just kind of shake. And I listened, and she had a very loud heart murmur. And we were able to, through the resources of this foundation there in Uganda, we were able to connect her with a cardiovascular, with a surgical team. She had a undiagnosed ventricular septal defect, and it was causing her to go into heart failure. And she was able to get it corrected. And so every time I've gone back, I make it a point to see her and shake her hand and talk to her. And it's been such a fulfilling experience because, she doesn't know me much and I didn't know her, but just by being there and having that minute of interaction, I thought that made a huge difference to her and her family. And, it's been a few years. I'm sure she's all grown up now. And when she has children of her own, what a difference that makes to an individual. And had we not gone, she probably would not have been screened. Even if she had met with one of the local doctors, they just don't do a lot of screening. They charge money, and people have a hard time getting into the clinic sometimes. So when we go and we offer those services to a large number of people, it's you find people who really need that help. And I still reflect on that and think, okay, that was something good that was accomplished by being in that place. And I took a lot of inspiration from what you taught during residency, Jan, and I really appreciate it. And I know that the ongoing residents that you still take, I'm sure, are still appreciative of that.
You were the pioneer. You were the first resident that went to Kenya.
Oh, really?
And followed in your footsteps. But you were the original one.
Well,
so
we got to
kick that legacy.
We got a kick out of it, and I still have gone, like I said, to Uganda quite a few times and to Ecuador several times, and I just have loved those experiences. One of the questions I was going to ask you is if you were to give advice to either a medical student or a resident or even a doctor that's in practice who says, "Hey, I want to get involved in something that meaningful and that inspirational." How would you direct them? Like, you can't just show up with a duffel bag and be like, "Oh, here I am." There's usually you have to go as part of some organization or know somebody on the ground that can help you so that you are making a lasting difference.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the big things is there's a lot of good work that's going on, and a lot of times we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can find out sort of what's going on and figure out how we can partner and how we can be a part of that. I think talking to people that have done that sort of thing, and can I be a part of what you do? And for Kenya, like the way I sort of got involved initially was there was a church from Brownsburg that went. We were still going with them when you went, Connection Point, and there were a couple of residents, one a year ahead of me, one a year behind me, who said, "Hey, we need another doctor. Can you go?" And I did, and I went with them a few times, and then kind of through that experience, and after I made some of those connections, I was able to sort of branch out and then start taking teams myself. And I think, yeah, finding somebody who you think is doing a good job and doing something you would like to be a part of, and then joining them, asking lots of questions before you go about, like, how do you get your medicines? How do you do this? How do you do that? And then when you're on the ground, finding out, well, how did you, find drivers, or how did you find where you're going to stay and where you're going to do these clinics and that sort of thing. And then, as you get those experiences, then, being bold to say, okay, like, I think at this point, like, I can, I've been mentored well, so I think, I can start to do this too. And then, perhaps we can have double the amount of teams on the ground and hopefully make more of an impact.
Yeah, and I'm sure the same. You've probably found each time you go back, you have some increased efficiency, or you find something that would work a little bit better absolutely. The next time. And I found the same. The more I've gone, the more I have found, oh, let's bring this next time, or let's recruit this team member. And one of the things that we've found to be the best use of the money that we raise for these trips is to hire local physicians or local healers to be a part of it. Unfortunately, their cost to the wages are very low in those places. So spending the money to say we're going to pay the hourly rate for a nurse or a doctor that works with the organization to come and be there on site, it helps the cultural language understanding, and it helps to tie them in with those resources. And a lot of times when we've come back, those same health care professionals are willing to join us again because they see the value in what we've done for their village, for their community. And I think that makes all the difference. And so I love what you're doing in your small corner of Indiana, but you're reaching that out, and then that has a ripple effect to people like me who have trained in those programs, and then it has the added benefit to people in those countries that are under-resourced. And I've found the best thing that happens as a part of that whole thing is that if we help people to get some good health care, they usually keep their kids in school. And if the kids stay in school, then they kind of pull themselves out of that deep poverty cycle because they learn how to be self-sufficient. And you fast forward a few years or a generation later, and suddenly there's a whole bunch of people that are not in that deep poverty cycle. They may still live in poverty by first world standards, but they're measurably improved by their efforts. And I think that's one of the best ways to kind of change the world in those locations.
Yeah, I think that's one of the neatest things, like having that longevity with places is, yes, like you said, to kind of see the changes that happen, and yeah, and knowing that, like you said, hopefully you've had a small part of lifting these people out of poverty, because I mean they want to, nobody wants to be dependent. At least in these countries, nobody wants to depend upon others. They want to be self-sufficient, and to give them some tools to enable them to do that is huge. You give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach him to fish, he eats for life. So again, you keep these people healthy so that they can, like you said, kids can go to school, get an education, and then just opens up a lot more opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, on this podcast, if anybody wants to get involved in this, I'll just put the invitation out to email me on the podcast information, or subscribe to the newsletter and hit reply. We'll try to tie you in with all sorts of resources, because this is happening all over the world. And I know, Jen, you were the one that kind of taught me that it doesn't have to be specific to one specialty. Like it doesn't say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
the only ones who are doing international outreach have to be eye surgeons, or the only ones doing that
Mm-hmm.
have to be orthopedic surgeons with a huge team. They need doctors of all stripes. And in the primary care side
Mm-hmm.
of it, we have generally done some small sutures or skin procedures or things that would be appropriate outside of an OR, but we've also found a tremendous number of people who need follow-up care whose lives would be
Mm-hmm.
shortened or severely harmed if they don't treat the disease they have. And sometimes it's just lifestyle modifications. Sometimes they really need some kind of a medical intervention or surgical intervention. So a tremendous opportunity to help other people. And I think that work is happening quietly among thousands of different people all over the world. But I think it's good to talk about it because that's a wonderful thing that you can be involved as a physician.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the other neat things is that it doesn't your team doesn't have to be just physicians either. You need people that have a heart to help. One of my favorite things is when perhaps like a physician goes and like their spouse goes along with them or their kids, and to really see people do that as a family. I've had the opportunity to take my niece, who's now 14, on a trip with me to Belize. And she helped count pills in the pharmacy, and she helped pass out toys to the kids, and just kind of, interacted with people. And it was definitely a perspective changing experience for her. So, yes, I would encourage people, if you have that inkling, get involved. And again, it's a great way for families to get involved in something together also.
Well, and physicians, by virtue of having gone through all that training, have to be leaders in that realm. And sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm just this or I'm just that in an organizational structure. But in these settings, it's an opportunity to provide that leadership and of course, take a group of people. They don't all have to have extensive medical training. It's wonderful to have some nurses or, like we discussed, an ultrasound technician or various people with the skills. But sometimes you just need hands-on there to work with the people as part of that team. And I thought, as I've talked to people who have gone with us on those trips, they even years later will tell me that was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life to go on that trip and to work with those people. And so it's not just self-centered. It says we serve other people that we find the deepest joy in medicine. I think that's probably true both at home and abroad. And I think that you found the same thing. But
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
well, the other topic I wanted to ask you about in that regard is as we go on in medicine, a lot of people kind of get to mid-career. They'll get to their 40s or their early 50s and they'll say, I'm just so burned out. I'm so stressed and so tired and so frustrated and so fed up with the disjointed medical system that I just feel burned out and I don't have any joy to do this. And so a question I wanted to ask you is, how do you stay centered? How do you fight that burnout? Because it's real. When it happens, it's very real.
Absolutely, it's real.
People aren't making it up. They feel very burned out. And I've been there before, and I'm sure you have too. How do you do that? What have you found as tips or tricks or any stories you might share of how you did that in your life?
Yeah. Definitely the field of medicine is very demanding of us. It's demanding of our time. There's always more things to do than there are hours in the day. And it definitely has a way of, getting to you, making you burnt out. I think like we talked earlier a little bit, reflecting on your why. Why did I do this sort of thing? And then I think, remembering those things that kind of fill your bucket up, and you've got to make time for them. It's real easy to, say, oh, well, I don't have time to get together with this friend, or I don't have time to do this other hobby that I enjoy, or, but you have to make the time. And sometimes you have to say, this other thing can wait. Sometimes you have to say no to the good stuff so that you can continue to build yourself up so that you can do great things. For me, traveling has been a huge thing. Like I said, during COVID, when we weren't able to, and, COVID was a very interesting time to be in medicine. It also, was very demanding. And I definitely could tell, like, wow, like I need to travel. I need to do something to kind of fill my bucket. I think other things are, taking your PTO. It sounds simple, but a lot of doctors don't do it, or they don't use it all. And we need that time away from medicine. We need to continue to feed the other parts of us that make us whole. And be that spiritually, emotionally, be that time with your family. Again, doing those hobbies, exercise, whatever it is. We have to make the time to do it. And then I think sometimes you have to look at what you're doing, and is this truly the best use of my talents, and is this where I can make the most impact? I loved my time in the emergency department, but it got to where when the opportunity came to come to the residency, it was definitely the right choice for me. So I guess those are some of the things that I think kind of help. And then being willing to talk to others about it too. Talk to that trusted colleague or that mentor, and say, hey, I'm really feeling burnt out. Like, how do I help this? So, what do I do? What have you done? I think we have to sometimes humble ourselves and seek that help.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes people, I think, get locked in this mindset that I can't change. I've done this, and now I have to stay on this journey in a way that I dislike for so long. And sometimes we do. You have to sometimes put up with a difficult situation for a while in order to see the good. That is for sure. But as a career progresses, you can make changes. You can move to a different job, or you can change your hours. And one of the things that I think enables that is financial freedom too. Like we discussed, we're blessed in the United States to have jobs that enable us to do some of these things. But I think the best times, or I guess the best use of physician time comes when physicians feel like they are financially free to pursue the thing that drives their passions. And if someone says, I have all these terrible debts and I've done all these things that make it so I have to do this job and I could never get out, it feels troublesome. But if you say, my financial house is in order, it's not so hard for me to take paid time off, or to take a vacation, or spend some of my time and resources on an international trip, or something that kind of fills my bucket. So what tips or tricks have you found through your career? Like what little financial clues could you give to people, especially early on? And after, I find that people make most of their mistakes financially in those first 10 years after residency. It's so easy to get tripped up in the financial world. And then you are financially crippled, and you say, how am I going to pay off the medical school? How am I going to do this? And so I'm curious, what have you found to be helpful in that realm?
Yeah, I definitely will not say that I'm a financial guru or anything like that. But I completely agree that a lot of mistakes or missteps happen early in your career. So I think, perhaps those first 3 years after residency, continue to live like a resident. Yes, your salary just went up a lot. But we've made it this long living much more reserved life, and a much more frugally. We don't have to get our house of our dreams right out of residency. Who knows? You may not like that job, and you might be moving in 2 years, and you just spent all this money on this house and probably won't recoup it. You probably don't need that first sports car right out of residency. That thing that got you through, keep duct taping it and doing what you can to keep it in play. And, I think, I do think there's I can't, it is such a celebration that, wow, I finally, I've arrived, I'm an attending. But I would encourage people to not make extravagant lifestyle changes kind of in those first few years out of residency. pay down your loans, so that you can get out from under that umbrella, of debt. The average person graduates with just a huge amount of debt, and it definitely can seem like insurmountable, but you can do it. You can get out from under that and still live a very comfortable life, but then hopefully achieve that financial freedom, sooner rather than later, so that you can truly do what it is that you want to do with that degree.
Yeah, those are wise words. I think the best thing about it is, I think the way to find motivation to continue to live frugally is that it does serve a higher purpose. It's not just the numbers. As a person lives frugally and says, especially in those first few years after residency, they say, let's pay down debt, let's save up for the future, let's catch up with our peers that have been working for the last 10 years while I've been in school, and try to get back to being broke before you start spending money on anything else that is too fancy, because before you are out of debt, your balance is still negative. And it doesn't have to just all be about money, but if you look at it and you kept living like a resident and you did it for a few years, you could set aside a really large percentage of your income toward debt or saving down for a house or a car, whatever large item you need. I think sometimes investment professionals or people who kind of masquerade as a insurance salesman, or people that would like you to buy a product that helps to enrich them, they target people shortly after they're finishing school, because at the end of residency you really don't have financial education, not very much formal education in finances, right. And suddenly you haven't grown into that higher income organically. It's suddenly you have a lot higher income as an attending physician. And so some of these folks look into it and say, well, I want a piece of that too. And so we have to be careful not to seek financial advice from those who would gain from your financial well-being. So it's just wise in the early stages of the career to set aside money, invest conservatively, and save. And I think later on, because every doctor at some point will say, hey, this is hard. I don't want to work 80 hours a week anymore, and I want to spend time with my family, or I'm not finding this same grind that I'm doing again and again quite as fulfilling, and so I need to have my financial house in order so that I can pursue some of these other things. And you've done it all the way through, Jen. You've been able to continue to do international work and teaching and the ER work, all the stuff that you've enjoyed doing throughout, and I think it's really cool that you've been able to do that.
Well, thank you. I definitely have been very blessed and to have those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, we're getting to the end of the time here, but do you have any final thoughts or anything else you would want to share with our audience, again, with pre-medical students or medical students or attending physicians?
Yeah. Wow. Words of wisdom. This, I think I would say that, this calling to be involved in medicine is a very high calling, and we are given the gift of being with patients in some of their most hard times, their most vulnerable times, some of the and never take that for granted. Know that what a privilege and what an honor it is that somebody puts all of their trust and all of their, that somebody believes you and, is willing to do what it is that you say. We are really, given a gift to be involved and to help people. And, just don't ever forget that. I've been at the bedside again when babies are born and you share those happy tears. I've also been at the bedside when people said goodbye to a loved one, and as a doctor, those are all special moments that we're entrusted, and I would just encourage you to make the most of it. Don't take any of it for granted. Um, Remember again that this is a higher calling that we've been given, and to whom much is given, much is expected.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for saying that. The title of the podcast is Doctors Making a Difference. And Jen Wilson is one of those doctors who makes a difference, made a difference in my life, and continues to make a difference for so many. And Jen, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the program and giving of your time here on the program, but also to those that you serve. And so I thank you again for your time and appreciate you doing that this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.